Ashland, Oregon, autumn 1993. The air was cold and still, the kind that settles into your bones and makes the trees seem to whisper secrets through their brittle branches. Mist crawled along the sidewalks like something alive, weaving between the street lamps and lingering just long enough to make you question what you saw. That October, something long dormant stirred on the corner of Ivy and Fifth. After 15 years of abandonment, the once renowned Marrow and Brush Gallery finally reopened under new ownership. Clifford and Elaine Turner, a middle-aged couple with a passion for restoring forgotten art, had left the chaos of Los Angeles in search of quiet and inspiration. They brought with them Elaine's niece, 16-year-old Rachel, who had recently come to live with them after a family tragedy no one liked to talk about. The gallery, though dust-covered and shadow-drenched, still held the bones of its former elegance. Stained glass skylights, carved oak railings, and dozens of canvases left behind by artists long forgotten. It was in the locked back room that Clifford found it, a portrait wrapped in cracked paper hidden behind a shelf. The painting was old, unsettlingly old. It depicted a woman in Victorian clothing, with pale skin, long black hair, and hauntingly blank eyes that shimmered in the light like wet glass. Clifford dismissed the unease as artistic flair and hung the painting in their living room, thinking it added character. That night, as the house groaned with the wind and the walls creaked with settling age, Rachel stood at the bottom of the stairs and stared at the portrait. The woman's eyes seemed different. Were they always open? And just for a second, did she blink? By morning, the frame was crooked on the wall, and the woman's eyes were closed. The house groaned louder that night, the kind of groan that didn't follow wind or footsteps. It moved beneath the floorboards like breath. Clifford blamed the pipes. Elaine lit candles. Rachel didn't sleep. She lay in bed with her blanket pulled up to her chin, eyes fixed on the hallway outside her bedroom. From her door, she could see the edge of the staircase and the top corner of the portrait. She didn't want to look, but couldn't help it. Then it happened again. A twitch, not in the hallway, in the painting. The woman in the portrait, it blinked. It wasn't a trick of light. Rachel saw the lids close, a soft, unnatural motion, too fluid for old paint. And when they opened again, the eyes weren't just staring forward. They were looking at her. Rachel slammed her door shut and locked it. She didn't sleep at all. The next morning, Clifford was already in the gallery, humming as he sorted brushes and old frames. Elaine was making coffee in the kitchen. Rachel crept downstairs, exhausted, hesitant. The portrait looked unchanged. She stared at it for a long minute. The eyes were open again, staring forward, lifeless. "Did either of you move it?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Clifford glanced up. "Move what?" "The painting. The eyes were closed last night." Elaine chuckled from the kitchen. "Sweetheart, it's a 100-year-old portrait. If anything blinked, it was probably you." Rachel didn't argue, but she noticed something new, a faint smudge beneath the eyes, like moisture, as if tears had been wiped away. That afternoon, Clifford began restoring a series of oil canvases in the basement studio. As he worked, he heard a soft creak above him. Footsteps, maybe. He ignored it. The old house was always creaking. Then came a low whisper. He paused, brush in hand. A whisper, not words, but a sound, like breath through cracked lips. It came from the vents. Clifford stood and approached the wall. Silence. Then, from upstairs, a loud crash. Clifford rushed up to find Rachel in the hallway, pale, eyes wide. "The painting," she whispered. "It's humming." Clifford looked toward the living room. Sure enough, there was a faint vibration in the air, a low, barely audible tone, like an old radio picking up static. They stood in silence as the sound faded. Clifford reached out to touch the frame. The instant his fingers met the wood, the lights flickered. The room went cold, every candle in the house extinguished at once. Rachel gasped. Elaine called out from the kitchen, What was that? Did the power go out? Clifford didn't answer. Because the eyes of the woman in the painting had rolled upward, only the whites remained. Shaken, they covered the painting with a blanket that night. But at 3:17 a.m., Rachel awoke to soft footsteps outside her door. Slow, deliberate. Then a tap, one soft knock. She didn't move. She just stared. Another knock. "Elaine?" she whispered. No answer. Then, a rustling sound. Fabric. Like something sliding to the floor downstairs. Rachel got out of bed and crept into the hallway. The living room below was dimly lit by the streetlight filtering through the blinds. The blanket was gone. The painting was exposed again, and the woman's mouth was now slightly open. The next morning, Clifford examined the portrait closely. He didn't believe in ghosts, but the image had clearly changed. The woman's mouth, once a firm, straight line, was now parted slightly, as if caught mid-whisper. "I must be losing my mind," he muttered, running a trembling finger along the edge of the canvas. Rachel stood behind him, silent, watching the woman's face as if it might move again. Elaine didn't say much. She avoided the living room altogether. But something strange began to happen. The house no longer felt like just a house. Shadows lingered too long. Mirrors reflected figures that weren't there. Cold spots drifted from room to room, following footsteps. At night, doors opened on their own. Once, Elaine found the kitchen faucet running, the water ice cold, though no one had touched it. Clifford decided to investigate the painting's origin. He returned to the gallery's storage room and dug through old records left by the previous owner. In a dust-covered journal, he found a reference. Portrait of Eveline Harrow, 1886. Gifted by her husband, never sold, reportedly cursed. That word, cursed. The handwriting was shaky. The entry ended abruptly. No price listed, just a note. She watches, she learns. That night, Rachel had a dream. She stood in the living room staring at the portrait. The woman, Eveline, turned her head, slowly, mechanically. Her neck cracked as it twisted, her mouth stretching open wider, wider, until the scream came. But it wasn't from Eveline. It came from the canvas, from inside it. Rachel woke up screaming. Her window was wide open, frost lined the edges, and in the hallway outside her room there were muddy footprints, barefoot, small, as if a child had walked down the hallway. But Rachel hadn't left her room, and neither had Elaine or Clifford. The next evening, Clifford tried to remove the painting. He gripped the frame and pulled. Nothing. It wouldn't budge. He tugged harder. The frame creaked, but remained stuck, as if the wall had swallowed it. Elaine came to help, placing her hands on the bottom edge. That's when the lights went out again. Complete darkness. Rachel screamed from upstairs. They rushed to her room. She was on the floor, curled up, pointing at the ceiling, written in dripping black letters above her bed. Let her speak. Elaine insisted they call someone, a local historian, a spiritualist, someone. Clifford hesitated, still clinging to reason. But the next morning, he found something chilling. On the floor beneath the painting, perfectly aligned, were three objects that hadn't been there before. A porcelain button, a lock of black hair tied with red string, a tiny mirror cracked down the center. None of them belonged to the house. Rachel had never seen them. Elaine refused to touch them. "We're not alone here," she whispered. "That painting, it's a door." That night, the humming returned, louder. This time, it was accompanied by a whispering chorus, as if many voices spoke from inside the walls. Rachel pressed her ear to the floor and heard them clearly. "She's watching. She's waiting." In the middle of the night, Clifford woke up to find the painting glowing faintly. Not just the eyes. The whole canvas shimmered with a silver haze, and the woman was smiling. not sweetly, knowingly. The next morning, Elaine left early. She drove 2 towns over to the local archives in Greenvale, a quiet corner of upstate New York, searching for any records of Eveline Harrow. What she found chilled her to the core. There had been an Eveline Harrow, born in 1852, married at 16 to a well-known spiritualist named Abram Harrow. They lived in a house known locally as Whisper Hill, notorious for seances and spirit exhibitions. Abram died under mysterious circumstances in 1884. Eveline disappeared 2 years later. Locals believed she had gone mad or vanished into one of her husband's seances. Some claimed she became part of the house, or worse, part of something else. Back home, Clifford and Rachel were experiencing something far more immediate. At precisely 3:17 p.m., the same time Rachel had heard footsteps every night, the house went silent. No birds, no wind, just a thick, electric hush. Then came the tapping. From inside the walls, Clifford leaned his head against the plaster. A sharp knock answered. 1, 2, 3. He backed away. Then the portrait moaned. Yes, moaned. A low, guttural sound vibrated from the canvas like something breathing through layers of paint. Rachel screamed as the woman's eyes turned black, not painted, but void, as if the canvas had opened into an abyss behind the stair. That night, they decided to perform a small ritual they found in Abram Harrow's original writings, a séance designed to commune through the veil. Clifford thought it ridiculous, but Rachel insisted. They set up in the living room. Candlelight flickered. The painting loomed above them, wrapped once again in the cloth. But it pulsed beneath it, a slow, steady throb like a second heartbeat in the room. Clifford read the invocation. Eveline, seeker between worlds, if you linger in frame or shadow, speak through silence. Return not to harm, but to end this unrest. Nothing. Silence. Then the table shook. The candle flames bent sideways as if pushed by breath. The cloth covering the painting lifted on its own. There she was again, Eveline, mouth open, eyes wet, and then she spoke. But not from her mouth, from behind them. You see me now, but you never asked why. Elaine returned moments later, out of breath, holding a thin leather journal, Eveline's own. Inside were strange entries, ramblings, drawings, one phrase repeated over and over. They sealed me in, not to silence me, but to silence what I saw. Below it, a disturbing sketch, not of a person, but of the portrait itself, with a second face hidden beneath Eveline's. Smaller, twisted, eyes closed. There's someone else in that painting, Rachel whispered. At 3:17 a.m., the final event began. The lights failed, the house rumbled, and the painting began to bleed, not paint but shadow, oozing like ink, stretching across the floor. Elaine shouted a prayer. Clifford backed away. Rachel stood still, transfixed, as Eveline's eyes locked on hers. I didn't do this. Eveline's voice echoed inside their heads. I'm the prison, not the prisoner. With a thunderous crack, the canvas split, not tore, split down the center. A wind burst through it like a scream, sending papers flying, candles extinguishing. And from the split canvas, a second figure emerged. Not Eveline. A child. Pale, expressionless, covered in ash, eyes sewn shut. It stepped forward, then stopped. It tilted its head at Rachel, then whispered, "Now I see." And just like that, it vanished. So did the shadow, so did the voice. The portrait crumbled into dust. Only the frame remained. Days passed, then weeks. The house grew quiet again, warm, peaceful. The whispers stopped. The humming never returned. The temperature held steady. Clifford restored the living room. Elaine reopened the gallery. Rachel slept through the night, but they kept the broken frame, hung it empty. A reminder, because sometimes it's not what's in the painting that's haunted, it's what the painting keeps out.